All right, welcome back now. After focusing on the one funeral that's going to be held today, of course, that's Joe Mafela, but that'll happen a little bit later on this morning. We once again turn our attention to Ahmed Kathrada. And at this point this morning, we're hearing that there's a hive of activity in Houghton at the Muslim Academy. That's here in Johannesburg, where Ahmed Kathrada's funeral service will be held. A number of police officials also can be seen on the streets around that particular area. We've been crossing over to our reporter, Zondile Mbeche, who's stationed there, and will continue to do that. Also, we'll try and follow the motorcade as soon as it starts making its way to West Park Cemetery. I imagine that'll be a little bit after 9 o'clock this morning. So stay tuned for all the live commentary and the live visuals that'll be coming to you throughout the day here on SABC. Of course, as we mentioned, the former struggle icon will be laid to rest at West Park Cemetery. There's a massive police contingency there. In fact, on my way to work, I already saw lots and lots of activity happening at West Park Cemetery, and that was during the early hours of this morning. So Aldrin St. Pierre is there, and he, of course, is talking to us from the West Park Cemetery. Aldrin, I can imagine that's very, very busy there, and lots of police, lots of people gathering there. Talk to us a little bit about what's happening around West Park.
Well, indeedly, and lots of activity here at the West Park Cemetery ahead of the burial that's expected to take place just before midday. That's officially the time that has been given that Ahmed Kathrada will be laid to rest here at the West Park Cemetery. Quite a lot of media interest as well in this funeral, but one can only imagine why you'd have so many media houses out here being part of the coverage of this final goodbye, as thousands are expected to come here to the West Park Cemetery to bid farewell to Ahmed Kathrada. And the foundation has indicated, of course, that today's funeral service is open to the public, and lots of police officers. And just to give us a sense of the funeral procession, I'm now joined by Mr. Suleiman, who's from Radio Islam, just to give us an understanding of how a Muslim funeral procession would go underway. You were speaking earlier on about the moment the hearse enters the West Park Cemetery. Just tell us about what happens then.
I think there are three fundamentals when it comes to an Islamic funeral process. It's underpinned, number one, by quickness, number two, by simplicity, and number three, it's meant to be a very inexpensive process. So from the time the deceased passed on, there's a bath that takes place where the body is cleansed, and then it is wrapped in 3 pieces of white cloth, and this is the same for everyone. So it maintains that equality, irrespective of your class or your standing or your profile. Everyone gets those 3 pieces of cloth. The body is then taken to the home of the deceased. There's a mourning process for the family members, and then he's brought with the hearse to the cemetery. Now, when he's taken off the cemetery, to add a bit of a personal touch, it is carried on the shoulders of the people present in the cemetery to the gravesite. It may be somewhat different today because of the proceedings that will take place, the tribute proceedings prior to the actual funeral prayer and the actual burial. Now, the quickness aspect is because Muslims believe that death transports you from an imperfect world towards the perfectness of the Almighty's mercy. So it's something that you need to hasten. It's something that you should not delay unnecessarily. Secondly, when you come here, the funeral prayer is a very short one. It's you'll see the Imam raising his hands 4 times and basically chanting Allahu Akbar, which means God is great. And in between, he and the other Muslims will be chanting praises to the Almighty, salutations to the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and asking for the forgiveness of the deceased. And thereafter, it's literally a 2-minute prayer, and then the body is lowered into the grave. There's a slight niche in the grave which faces in the direction of Mecca, and the body is put there, and then planks are put in to support the body, and the body is filled with soil. So the process is meant to be quick, it's meant to be very simple, and it's meant to be very inexpensive. For literally a few thousand rands, the logistical costs, a person gets buried in Islam. The whole idea is transfer him to the mercy of the Almighty as quickly as possible, do it in a manner which shows that everyone is equal in front of the Almighty, and do it in a manner which is inexpensive and does not complicate things for anyone.
Just quickly speak to us about having the body being carried on the shoulders of those mourners who will be here, part of today's proceedings. What does this symbolize? What's the symbolism of that process?
Well, it's number one, it's to acknowledge the person who is passed on. It's a kind of a personal farewell, a personal final farewell, personal touch. But it's also meant to remind us that our stay here in this temporary world is that it's temporary. And we also have to remind ourselves, many of the chantings that take place are of Arabic supplications that remind us that today we are burying somebody else, tomorrow we are going to be burying ourselves. It's to remind us that we need to live our lives in a way which is pleasing to the Almighty, so that when that inevitable death does come, at a time when we don't know when it will come, that we meet our Creator, our Maker, in a manner where He is pleased with us. So death is, the entire funeral process in Islam is also meant to remind those who are still alive that you are not here forever, you cannot do as you please, you will have to meet your Maker, and you will have to account for the way in which you lived your life.
I don't know if you'd be able to speak on this, but I understand that ordinarily females will not be allowed at the cemetery, but today we see there's something different with regards to today's proceedings, considering that you have a struggle icon who is being laid to rest here.
No, I wouldn't say that females are not allowed specifically or jurisprudically from the perspective of Islam. What happens is, because a deceased ordinarily is buried within hours of having passed on, the actual mourning takes place at the home. And many times the deceased is buried late at night. Because what happens, you want to do it quickly, and at the same time at night is when people have come back from work, etc. So because of logistical preferences, women prefer to do the mourning at home, and the men folk come and do the quick prayer and then do the burial. Ordinarily, today you won't see it because of the tribute, so we'll be here for a few hours, but ordinarily you're in and out of the cemetery within minutes. If you stay only for the prayer, you're in and out in 10 minutes. If you stay for the burial, another half an hour or so. So the men folk just generally carry out that part of it, and the women folk, as a logistical preference, don't usually get involved in that, but it's not to say that they are disallowed as such.
Okay, and just finally, before I let you go, I understand that when you have the body wrapped in this white cloth, that just before the body is laid at its final resting place, it is the 2 points on either side, on the feet as well as the head, is then open up.
What happens is when the three pieces of white cloth are put on the body, there's a kind of knot that's tied on either side, by the feet and by the head. And when the body is put into the niche, those two knots are loosened up, and the cloth on the top, where the face area is loosened up somewhat, and then the body is tilted towards the inward side of the niche, and then the planks put at the back so that the body doesn't fall back, and then the soil is then filled into the grave.
Sulman, thank you so much for your time. There you have it with regards to today's proceedings, what we expect to be taking place here at the West Park Cemetery. And as I've indicated before, that the foundation has said that today's proceedings are, of course, open to the entire public. There's a huge marquee that has been set up. Yesterday, when I spoke to the director of the foundation, he said that the marquee would be able to take around 2,000 to about 3,000 people, seated people. But there will be arrangements that we make in case you have more people making their way through to today's funeral procession. I'm just going to step out of camera quickly just to give you a glimpse of the final resting place of Uncle Kathy Ahmed Kathrada, as South Africans as well as those who love him across the world will be bidding farewell to this struggle veteran, this struggle icon who has made sure that he fights for South Africa, a Rivonia trialist, and of course we've heard many commentary that has been made yesterday as well, and tributes being pouring out for Ahmed Kathrada as South Africa bids farewell to the struggle icon. And today will be no different when we have former President Kgalema Motlanthe, who will be leading the procession in terms of a political tribute. He will be leading the political tribute at today's proceedings. Those proceedings are expected to be quite short. It's going to be starting at 10 o'clock up until 11:30, and at 11:30 that's when the prayer session will be taking place. That is the Muslim burial rites session that will be taking place, and just before midday, that's when we all will be bidding farewell to Uncle Kathy.